Now on 4, bringing the house story up to the present in the final Pump Up the Volume, which contains very strong language from the start.
You know, you're in New York. You don't ever think about going to another country, to the other side of the world, and hearing people loving the same music that you love.
Yeah, we were filled on drugs. Yeah, it was off our tits, going fucking ballistic. But that's what it was about.
There was a time when there wasn't a term house music or techno music or warehouse or garage or happy house or all this other shit. It was just music.
What we're gonna do right here is go back.
In the late 80s, house in America was still an underground music. In the country of its birth, radio stations were firmly segregated and played either rock, country and western, or R&B and hip-hop. If you liked up-tempo dance music, house music, you had to go to a club to hear it.
House is a big part of club culture today, you know, and for the last, 15 years. House music, all of it wasn't on the radio, you know, but this was a scene that was developing all around the world, you know, that started in Chicago and New York. It's just a feeling in the clubs that you get from these drive-in tracks, these great tracks, great songs, great feelings, some of them had great lyrics. They weren't all instrumentals.
I remember every person in the club vocally responding to records. Imagine that. Imagine being in a club, even if it's like 500 people. When everybody's vocally responding to almost every song the DJ plays, that's energy, man.
At clubs like the Paradise Garage in New York, DJs were making converts to the house scene.
But I had a friend that turned me on to it. He was a house head. So he would have all these people over there that hated house, but he'd be playing it and he'd be jacking, you know, dancing like move your body, rock. He's just looking at him like, this guy's retarded. And it took me a long time. It took me like late 88 for me to really start getting into house. But I caught on to Todd Terry.
Known to his fans as God, Todd Terry brought a hard-hitting hip-hop sensibility to the basic house sound.
Like, I like house now. I only like Todd, but I like house. It was just energizing. It was just like, your cats would be just bug into it, you know? So that was my introduction to house. Gritty, raw, in-your-face house. I used to see guys, I thought they were gonna rip off their dreads. They were like on the floor like this, like almost to the point in tears, over a record. No drugs, you know what I mean? That's house.
Todd Terry's quick-fire samples and rugged bass lines forged a blueprint for house that's still being followed today.
Most people's style, even like if you want to look at who's hot, like Daft Punk or like anybody that disco loops, Todd did that first too. So disco looping, Todd did that first. Let me put a rock sample on a house beat. Oh, Todd did that already too. You know, it's not much left Todd hasn't done.
While Todd was undoubtedly a pioneer, it was only on the other side of the Atlantic that house had a mainstream audience. Over in the UK, by the end of 1989, house was top of the pops.
What were the skies like when you were young?
They went on forever. We lived in Arizona, and the skies always had little fluffy clouds in them.
Ambient house mixed down-tempo beats to new age electronic music.
And when it would rain, they were beautiful, the most beautiful skies, as a matter of fact. The sunsets were purple.
Club DJs found this pretty quick in the late 80s with acid house, is that you couldn't really play a whole vocal because people would just come down and they'd think they're listening to Radio 1 or something, you know. So they'd have to play the instrumentals, but every now and again a tiny bit of vocal, either sung or a little bit of spoken word, would just give you a kind of little rope from the heavens to say, okay, this is something to look at.
Layering different sounds on top of each other. Layering different sounds on top of each other.
We would just play Rainforest sounds over old ambient music and then spin in some Marshall Jefferson or some house stuff as well. And create a whole evening of seamless ambience, you know.
The Orb's Little Fluffy Clouds introduced chilling out to the rave generation.
The skies always had little fluffy clouds in them, and they were long and clear, and there were lots of stars at night.
And so we just put it together, and suddenly, you know, it sounded just great, you know. A lot of people came up to me afterwards, a couple would run up to me and say, well, who did that? That's the most beautiful voice I've ever heard in the world. Where is she? You know, where can I meet her? And I think what part of the fun of the record was that finding out that it was Ricky Lee Jones was the last person you'd expect it to be. It's not Chucky's in Love, is it?
But the most unlikely take on house was to be the result of its collision with rock and roll.
Kids from Salford formed a band, and the fact that they were to change history, I don't think people are conscious that they're going to do that. I don't think Elvis Presley was conscious he was going to do what he was going to do. You know, he just did what he did, and they just did what they did.
Formed in Manchester in the mid-80s, the Happy Mondays started life as a typical indie rock band.
At the time, in Little Houghton, which is part, you know, like an overspill of Salford, they built the most used gigantic superstar, right, called Scam. It sold everything from the sports goods, you know, to guitars, to amplifiers, to records, to food, right? But basically, they had it set up like a fucking greengrocer's. A mirror there, and fucking 20 old ditties on the till. We used to go shopping with our mum and dad, right, and we'd purposely put our fishtail parkas on. Darts down there, they'd sold air guns down in your lining. They had these country and western amps in, right, which was fucked. And you could literally get away with carrying these things out.
But it was during the recording of their second album, Bummed, that the Mondays started to absorb the twin influences of house music and ecstasy.
20 or 30 of our friends had come down to this little club. So we gave the DJ some new records to play, right? Put a pill down his neck, and we're all dancing like this and having a great time. And then there's all these squaddies, and all looking like that. What's your fucking mate looking at, and why are you dancing like that? You taking the piss. So me and another pal of ours, I won't mention his name, said to this guy, look, just put one of them in your mouth, and in an hour's time, right, just trust us, in an hour's time, you'll enjoy yourself, and there'll be no fighting, and you'll be dancing like us. He ends up scrounging like about 30 pills for all his squaddy mates. So 2 hours later, we've got all these squaddies in this thing doing this, you know, and dancing and going, saying, this is the best thing, I don't want to go back in the army and all that lot.
So there we are in Driffield, and I drove over there, but in between that and finding all these squaddies looking for the Mondays in the local pub, I finally find the studio in this courtyard and go in the recording room, and there's Martin Hannett recording a wonderful rock track, God knows which one. And then I go across the courtyard to what is normally where musicians play pool and hang out and drink coffee and get bored. And all I could hear was coming out of this space, and there was no lights on. I remember opening the door, and it was pitch dark, and stumbling over bodies and lots of black vinyl. And across the way, they were recording this rock album, but in this room, they were all lying on the floor, out of their heads, just playing this weird, obscure, American imported house music.
To put a house beat into their indie rock, the Mondays brought a DJ into the studio.
Rope for Luck was just, the way I approach that mix is what works on the dance floor. None of us really knew how it was going to turn out. I knew what I wanted. I knew that the rhythms in rock records never worked. So it had to be more rhythmic, especially the bottom end. So it was all about changing the B line and the drums. So basically we took a loop from NWA, looped it up, got Ryder's vocals up and worked on a groove, and it went from there.
Well, what he brought to it, right, was he brought that sort of trance to it. Do you know what I mean? Where, you know, you didn't have to, well, the boom, you know, you could give it all that and things, you know what I mean? And even do cartwheels and things, you know, and things like that. He brought that smooth mellowness, everything to it, all the right ingredients.
When you've got the trust that Sean and the boys gave us, and the vision that we had, it just worked. It wasn't something that you sat down and tried to work out why it worked. There was a vibe, and the vibe was a good vibe.
And plus, we didn't have a clue. You know, if you'd have shown me a mixing desk, then, you know, I'd have thought you cut sheet metal on it.
Think about the future, the future.
The Mondays led an explosion in indie dance music and took house to a whole new audience.
Think about the future, the future.
And I'm quoting the Daily Telegraph here. The drummer and bass player of the Mondays changed British music by adapting the house rhythms of Chicago to British rock, punk, indie or whatever. They were the synthesizers. They were the people who inadvertently put all this shit together.
Oi, oi! Get stuck in, you nutters! It's back to the old school, volume 2, from Ministry of Sound.
Back to life, back to reality, back to life, back to reality.
House had shaken up pop and rejuvenated rock, but its impact on British culture wasn't just musical.
You probably had black friends and I had white friends, but you wouldn't party together. You would not party together. It just wasn't that way. After work, you went your way, I went my way. Do you know what I mean? That's how it was in the 80s, like it or not, it was. But what the rave scene did, it put everybody together. After work, they came together.
As the 80s ended, the country found itself dancing to the same drum.
We started to experience going out to raves and seeing all different cultures under one roof. Because in our vibe, when we was growing up doing our thing, it wasn't like that, as he said. It was just a black thing or a white thing. So we were going out and seeing this culture of things mixing up, and we was a part of that. We were like, yeah, this is good.
Inspired by the spirit of rave, warehouse party crew Shut Up and Dance added breakbeats to the emerging British sound.
If you went to a rave back then, as you probably did yourself, taking ease, naughty man.
No comment.
You would notice that everything was drum machines. Everything was dum dum, just straight 4 beats. But when we was making music, it was using break beats.
Drum breaks had been the rhythmic base of hip hop for years.
We took the break beats out of the hip hop culture and put it into our music, but we sped it up to a house tempo.
By strapping an up-tempo break onto a basic house rhythm, Shut Up and Dance took the music another step away from the clubs of Chicago and New York.
We used to put on our warehouse raves, you know, but we was only charging like £2, £3 to get in. And then when the so-called house scene started to blow up, the rave scene, all of a sudden it was £10 to get in. Do you know, we was like, no, taking a piss here. We was charging £2 to get in our place. We was, at one time, we was like, there's no way I'm paying this to go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, we were charging like £2, £3 at our gates, and people were screwing to pay that. So when we heard people are paying £10, we were like, bloody hell, that's amazing. Like, where are these people getting the money from? And like, these promoters are taking the piss. So that's sort of where the idea from the tune came from.
Shut Up and Dance fueled the growing rave scene and laid the foundations for both jungle and UK garage.
After we came up, a lot of people were trying to copy us, trying to copy our sound. But we were getting mentioned in the same breath with that hardcore sound. But we always never saw ourselves as that, and we always distanced ourselves from that. But again, it's like one of them ones where we thought it was a rap band, but we weren't, so what do I know?
As house entered the 90s, it continued to stir up new musical styles.
The hardcore scene started off as jungle first, and then it was kind of jungle techno, and then it went from jungle techno to hardcore, and then from hardcore to happy hardcore, and then from happy hardcore to kind of like the SL2 sound, which was like jungle, happy hardcore, and everything thrown in the pot together, which became commercial.
The English have to have a name for every goddamn thing, you know? It's ridiculous, man. It's just got to be something, and it's always got to have some sort of marketability behind it. And I know it's a business, but golly, I mean, here we are still trying to retitle and rehash old music with new titles and new genres and all this kind of shit. I mean, what is it now? I don't even know what it is anymore. It's always something new, some stupid ass name for music.
Whatever names you called it, it wasn't going away. 2 years after it mushroomed in the English countryside, the rave scene had grown from the illegal parties of '88 into huge licensed events. No longer underground, rave was mainstream.
I think there was a time when you probably couldn't buy a packet of Rizzlers outside of the M25. But by 1992, 93, you could probably go to the Orkneys and buy E.
You should be interviewing the drugs. I'm telling
got a lot to answer for.
They got a lot to answer for, I'm telling you.
You have to think, kind of the people that made the original house records, the Detroit and Chicago DJs, most of them didn't take drugs. In fact, they were kind of appalled. You know, this was a technological experiment for them. You know, the use of the 303 and stuff. In England, this was a music being driven by drug taking. This was people kind of like taking their idea of what was going on in their heads at 4 o'clock on Saturday night, right? You know, in front of 10,000 people, and trying to process that through the machine. And it was weird, and it got weirder. And, you know, tempo started getting faster because they were excited. They were kind of somehow mapping this accelerated heartbeat onto, you know, this soundtrack of their lives.
At that time, everybody was like partying. Everybody was into acid house culture, rave culture. You know, we wanted to send it up a little bit, not promote it. And that was where people actually got it wrong. They thought we was doing an ecstasy promotion song where we wasn't. We was actually taking the piss out of it.
There's a guy in the place who's got a bit of sweet face and he goes by the name of Ebenezer Good. His friends call him Easer and he is the main geezer and he vibe up the place like no other man could. He's refined, he's sublime, he makes you feel fine. And very much maligned and misunderstood. But if you know Easer, he's a real crowd pleaser. He's ever so good, he's Ebenezer Good.
They tried to ban it. There was this whole inquiry about it. We had to do interviews about it and did totally deny that it was about ecstasy and say that it was about this composite Dickensian character. And the reason we've done this song about this Dickensian character is to put some life back into the pop charts, some substance, some theatre. People just think it's the chorus. The chorus pales to insignificance when you listen to the verses. Like, there's a guy in the place, got a bittersweet face, and E goes by the name of Ebenezer Good. So there's the confession there. His friends call him Easer, and E is the main geezer. E vibes up the place like no other man could. E's refined, E's sublime, E makes you feel fine. They're very much maligned and misunderstood. But if you know Easer, E's a real crowd pleaser. E's ever so good. E's Ebenezer Good. And it's every line. Every line.
Anyone got any underlay?
I was on Radio 1 being interviewed by Mark Goodyear and they was talking about Ebenezer Good. And Mark said to me, so on Top of the Pops last week, you said, has anyone got any underlay? What was that all about? I said, oh, it was a rug reference.
Ebenezer Good, Ebenezer Good. He's Ebenezer Good, Ebenezer Good, Ebenezer Good. He's Ebenezer Good.
This far down the line, I can put my hands up and say, yeah, it was all about ecstasy. At the time we couldn't because we would have got banned. They failed to ban us.
Back in America, a young Brooklyn producer was about to redefine house for the 90s.
I listened to house music in 85 and 86, and at that time, house music could be anything. You know, it was like acid was house music. If it had an 808 beat and a more of electronic feel, it was house music. If it had a soulful vocal and a piano chords in it, that was house music, you know? And I liked that. I liked where I could jump around a little bit and go work with my moods. You know, I had many moods. I was happy one day, some days I was depressed. You know, by the time I was like 19 and well into making records, all that really didn't interest me. I still was like 19 and being rebellious. I didn't want to do music that was popular. I wanted to do music that was cool, underground, and, you know, represented me and, you know, the youth or whatever, you know. But I still thought I was making house music. I thought the track was done. It needs one other element, something to put on top of it. Eventually I came across this sample, it's Ecstasy, and I was just like, wow, that works with the track. But because of the time, because of the feel of the track, because it was a darker house record, which became techno or whatever, people were like, ecstasy, you know, that's a drug record, that's a drug anthem. He means ecstasy, you know, the drug or whatever.
I don't think anybody expected for Joey to come out the way he did. And Energy Flash was some other shit. You know, it was really some other shit. It was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was a nice track though, it still is today.
I think that broke the back of a lot of things. You know, it was just so different. Wow, 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 wow.
I think for me, it was hearing it for the first time about 7 in the morning at sort of as close as we can get to Stonehenge Krusty Festival thing, the Spiral Tribe. And I was saying, right, I'm going to go to my tent now, I've had enough. And the sun was coming up and someone just started playing that and I just thought, what the hell is that? And it just sounded like how I felt, do you know what I mean? This crazy sound. It was just, I can't believe this record. It's so hard and mad and, you know.
Great, brilliant records. I mean, I know people that even aren't into house music or techno have heard that and gone, what's this? This record's mad. And that's like 10 years after it was released.
Energy Flash redefined the limits of dance music. But its dark minimalism and brooding intensity was too much for the house scene.
I guess maybe I was disillusioned because, you know, I guess in England they just said, no, this is techno, son. You're making techno records, and we're gonna call you techno. We're gonna sell your stuff. We're gonna like it and whatever. But as long as you have that techno label affixed to you, you know. But you know, I thought I was making house music. You know, I just thought I was making house music, but with a different edge.
Too hardcore for New York, Beltram found his spiritual home in Europe. Clubs like Rage in London, house was getting harder, darker. DJs pitched records up on the decks to increase the tempo.
It was about fucking just getting down, getting nuts. Do you know what I mean? That's what it was about. People going fucking mental. That's all this club was about. And yeah, we were filled on drugs. Yeah, it was all fuck. It was off our tits, going fucking ballistic. But that's what it was about.
When I played at Rage for the first time, well, the atmosphere. That was the first place I ever saw with a laser. That was just like, swallowed up the whole dance floor.
It was just absolutely mad. There's this fucking laser going mental on people's heads.
Just walking in, the energy and the vibe and everything, it was crazy.
Fucking everyone's got the shirts off going absolutely fucking mental, you know what I mean? On these podiums going crazy, and I thought, fucking hell, this is intense.
You know, you had from models to hippies to students to stockbrokers. We're just all in there, just, you know, loving the music.
Because it was like, you saw black people, white people, and it was just like, people were just raving, whistling, shouting, there was horns going off, and it was like a football match, you know what I mean?
Hardcore. It wasn't just a sound, but a whole attitude.
Because I was like there, always trying to think, I'm gonna design a fucking tune. I've got the tune that's just gonna fuck people up. You know, I'll be fucking dropping easy and like fucking 5 a night, be fucking off my tits. So, right guys, I'm buzzing, let's make music. So, I heard this tune last night, I heard this. And you start fucking around and things start coming out. The thing you can't forget, the instinctive thing, all I wanted the people to do was dance. I EQ'd Terminator on about 5 E's and I was standing on the fucking desk on the roof. I remember the first time I played a tune, I was like, fucking hell. My fucking hair went like whap, straight up. And I remember, I just closed my eyes and I was fucking buzzing off my nut. I just came up with about 2 eddies. I just felt this whole I felt like I am the fucking king of this club, right? And I just felt this warm beam across me.
You're talking about things I haven't done yet.
People didn't know what the fuck was going on. I was like, what the fuck is this? It was just like bending people's fucking prisms open, you know? It was like, what the fuck is that? I didn't know what I'd done. I didn't realise what I'd done.
Terminator is out there.
Goldie took hardcore's breakbeat and hammered it into a whole new sound. Drum and bass.
I didn't want it to be about my mother or about Timeless or about, you know what I mean? A select piece of music. It was just about making people fucking dance. That's it.
The sound was getting like really dark and like heavy. Tempos started to speed up a little, and it just got like a lot more sophisticated than it was. It wasn't just like really simple kind of dub B lines anymore. We started like to get more into like the synthesis of like the bass lines and like it wasn't just like sampling a hip hop break and speeding it up anymore. It was actually using like samples like chopped up and loops, reversing them, and the whole process basically got like a lot more sophisticated.
I remember seeing Derek, man, I met him previously before that, and somebody said, that's the guy that did Strings of Life. Oh, fuck. And always in the back of my mind was, I'm gonna fucking freak that guy out. Because I always wanted to freak out the guys that were making the fucking music.
And I remember I said to him, look, Derek, I want to play you something in the car, but I don't need to fucking get out of the car. He said, what do you mean? It's like, what do you fucking mean? That's why it's like 22 minutes long, you know what I mean? So he's like, well, what? I'm like, it's 22 minutes long. He's like, all right, so you can't speak though, I just want to play this again. So I sat him in the car and I just fucking pressed play and I thought, fucking see you later.
Inner city life took drum and bass into realms of sophistication previously unthought of.
He came into my office. He sat down in front of me and said, what do you want? I said, oh yeah, you're good. He said, of course I'm fucking good. What do you want? He was really aggressive. And then he sort of threw this cassette at me. And I didn't know what I was going to get, and I had to sit there for 20 minutes, 22 minutes to be precise, and listen to Inner City Life. And I said, right, where do I sign?
Goldie's debut album, Timeless, catapulted drum and bass out of the clubs and into the charts.
When I met Goldie, I was probably as excited about him as a sort of star as I was about his music. I mean, I was knocked out by his music. But I really did think, you know, that my time had come, that, you know, after, say, not signing Soul to Soul or Nana Cherry or whatever, this was the next one to come along that could be a truly international megastar.
No matter what happens, I will never make another piece like Timeless. I will never make, you know, Timeless will always be the best drum and bass album ever. You will never ever beat that album.
The government, meanwhile, had been drafting legislation aimed at controlling rave culture. Amendments to the Criminal Justice Bill in 1994 defined a rave as anything more than 100 people listening to amplified music characterized by the emission of successive, repetitive beats. Not since Oliver Cromwell's Sunday observance laws had Parliament tried to stop people dancing.
For the first time, I think people felt like, yeah, this is our land, this is our country, and we want to party, and why not? And who's to say that we shouldn't do that? And if they are, why are they saying that? And who's this thing called the state saying, you're not allowed to have fun, you can't go into a field and dance all night if you want to? So basically, yeah, prerequisite of human experience and prerequisite of human right, I would have thought.
Ravers and crusties forged an alliance to fight for their right to party.
I've got to stand and fight in this creation. Vanity, I know, can't hide I alone. I'm searching to find a love that lasts all time.
Despite protests, the Criminal Justice Bill became law in November 1994. Of course, it did nothing to stop house music's evolution.
Dance music was always viewed as a faceless entity, wasn't it? Left Field didn't really want to be seen. You know, they didn't want the fame, but they knew that they had to bring it to a live stage and a live standard. It was like, you know, we just want to rock you, and that was the difference. And they pulled it off live, and a lot of bands still don't do that now. You know, they do a lot to play back and play bits live. Left Field played live. They had a drummer. They had, you know, it was brilliant. It's brilliant.
Researching to find the love that lasts all time.
Left Field drew on house, techno and dub to create a distinctly British sound.
Neil was a massive reggae fan, more than me. He's had a lot of history with reggae. It wasn't a dance record, it was just more a bit of an experiment really, with a few beats and like It was an unusual tempo again. It's like 110 BPM. It wasn't really prime time kind of dance music, you know. But we knew it was our own sound, so we just went ahead and we released it on our own label, Hard Hands.
Musically, nothing else was sounding like Left Field. You know, a lot of it was kind of sounding a bit Aboriginal, and there was all mad sounds like Ouija this and wobbly that, and, you know, just so different, so original, so groundbreaking. Got what they deserve, basically. Can't say enough good about them. They are my idols.
And in 1993 they pulled off one of House's most audacious acts of assimilation.
I think it's probably one of the best records we ever made, definitely, you know. It was something, and we knew it was different because it had all these influences of techno, world music, dub, with John Lydon's track, which we sent over to John, and he just sort of rang us back and said, "Where's the fucking chorus?" sort of thing. And I remember saying to people, I've just done a track with John Lydon. People going, really? Like that sort of thing, you know. Sort of suppose people couldn't imagine what it would be like. And then a few people came down the studio, I played it to them, and they were just blown away, you know. And I knew then that we had something good, and we got a great performance out of John.
Inside your skin, down for the money, not the screen.
It was the record that crossed us over into mainstream pop music, I suppose, for want of better words, you know. It was a record suddenly that if you weren't into dance music, but you liked punk or you liked rock music, you could suddenly get into this, but it had a groove.
Left Field proved that by the mid-90s the UK had well and truly made house music its own.
I mean, where Paul Daly gets that bass from, I do not know.
In its spiritual homeland, the music was coming out of the darkness. Producers like Masters at Work had finally put house into the US charts.
We were getting really pop-oriented records. We said, let's take the B-sides and just put our style of music on it. Strictly going for it, you know, going for rock in the clubs. You know, we took a couple of vocal samples from, you know, the song from the artist or whatever, and put it on the B-side and called them Masters at Work dubs. So we just wanted people to feel our vibes, and that's how it started. Next thing you know, like Frankie Knuckles was playing a Debbie Gibson record, and he would never play a Debbie Gibson record, but that B-side was so strong, that dub, and he loved it. He loved the whole vibe.
Masters at Work's remixing of pop stars like Mick Hucknall into club floor fillers sealed the supremacy of the DJ as a studio producer.
You got a love so strong, you really turn me on. Wait till tomorrow night, I wanna treat you right.
They didn't even want the house mix. That's what I'm saying. It was just a remix. And we just ended up doing that dub, and they put it on the B-side, and that's what started the whole thing. But they didn't know what the hell house music was.
For DJs, it had always been a short step from mixing records in a club to remixing them in a studio. Now the major record companies were calling on them to bring a big club feel to pale chart pop.
When I did Torian, it was like a lot. I think it was bugged people out the most because it was not like anything I've done.
Honey, bring it close to my, honey, bring it close to my lips, yeah. Honey, bring it close to my, honey, bring it close to my lips, yeah. Honey, bring it close to my.
I didn't know who she was, never heard of her. And the guy's just like, I'm like, how much is it? Okay, do I have time? Okay. It was just kind of like that regular ordeal. It wasn't like anything special, except for he said one thing to me. He's like, I really want you to do something different.
Bring it close to my lips, yeah. Honey, bring it close to my lips. Honey, bring it close to my lips. Yeah.
Armand Van Helden's pumped-up remix of Tori Amos was a massive crossover hit. Big in both the clubs and charts in the US and UK, it cemented house music's domination of pop.
It's like, that's a rock guy. Okay, it's a guy, rock dude playing the bass. People thought I'd sample it from a disco record. That bass is being played for 3.5 minutes. That pluck that I loop for 1 bar goes by, and it's just like, you just listen to the bass, that's the one, and I'm in. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like, you know, I mean, if there's any art to it, I guess it's just that art of knowing. I'm just about like, sample a, loop a beat, loop a groove, I'm done. I'm done. It's just like, no rocket science in it at all. It's just all about that groove, and what that groove does makes everything else secondary. I don't care, you can label it, title it, call it this, call it that. I start something, I don't start something. People hate me, people love me. I'm just in the studio, I make beats. That's what I do.
The simple art of making beats has elevated the DJ from someone who plays records into someone who makes them. Since back in the day house emerged from the clubs of Chicago, DJ Pierre has been at the cutting edge of its many innovations.
I mean, like people like Daft Punk, Armand Van Helden, these people have taken stuff and they've been real creative. And you can't say that these people haven't been more creative or less creative than we were. Like, you know, people say, Pierre, you started acid, you know, how do you feel about these people, you know, doing this and that and taking your sound? And I'm like, whose sound? Once it's on a record, it's like it's like shareware. You know, you're sharing it, and you're allowing other people to add their own ideas. I mean, whatever I did, I guarantee you, I got it from somebody.
Built on the ability to take ready-made sounds and create something new, house has redefined the very notion of music.
You got to keep learning in this business to stay on top. You can never say, oh, I'm not going to listen to so-and-so, that's some new kid, what does he know? I'm like, these new kids come in with fresh ears. They like, oh, what if we do this? You know, just like when I first started, I'm like, oh, you know, turning these knobs, doing stuff. So, I mean, you got to keep learning.
2001, and this restless quest for the perfect beat goes on in UK garage.
We don't live that life. It wasn't, you know, R&B, because, I don't know, we don't live that life either, you know? It's not, it wasn't that. It was inner city music. It was the music that kids were making in their bedrooms, listening to radio and sampling tunes and just sticking their own thing on it. You know, you can tell it's England, it's UK.
And they were just really sped up. So you'd think, I like the track. When I get to the club, you see everyone hyped and you think, oh, I'll just touch it up on the deck a little bit. And it worked. I told Ed's track, when it's sped up by that much, all of a sudden it has a whole different groove and a different feel.
It appeared that we just wanted it a little bit more raw, a little bit with a bit more of a bass line, more for dancing than to, you know, easy listening kind of thing. So then there was this little, I don't know, little transition where it was a grey area between being, you know, the bump of the UK and the smooth of the US, and that's where it was born.
When I look outside my window, what do I see? A world without.
While its roots may lie in America, the heart of UK garage is the British underground club scene.
You'll get the raw material being the basic 4/4 or the basic tempo of
128 to 130, which it would have got from house.
A lot of it kind of stems from the old sort of ragga scene and the sound system. You know, a lot of the chats picked up from there, and a lot of the bass lines.
It probably all stems right back from drum and bass. You know, there's always been that kind of nasty, twisted, bass sounding, you know, rough drums type thing, which people like. And you know, UK garage is as drum and bass is just evolved from house music.
House, British breakbeat and reggae style MCs has already leapt out of the underground to dominate the charts.
Till we drop.
UK garage has been sitting down for quite a while now, and it still has its place in clubland. And there is now a niche for it in the big wide world of pop music.
At the moment, we're taking jungle bass lines, we're taking Miami bass and hip hop beats, and we're putting R&B vocals on it, and we're speeding it up, and we're making it a garage track. And you know, that's always the way it is. And that's, you know, and that's progressive. You know, as long as music progresses, then it's the important thing.
Constantly reinventing itself, house's unique ability to create new genres is matched only by its irresistible power to move dance floors across the world.
One more time.
I think the house is the feeling, and I think that if you don't feel it, it can't be house.
It's always about bringing emotions out in people, making them feel great.
I mean, that's what house is supposed to be, a good time.
One more time, we're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah.
Crossing divisions of nation, race, sexuality and class, house has grown into an international phenomenon which shows no sign of stopping, ever.
This isn't a new thing.
People have been dancing to tribal rhythms for 40,000 years, probably more. It's not about to stop.
It's just let it all out, let it all go, be free. That's what house is.
The book, Pump Up the Volume, price $9.99, and the official double CD, History of House, featuring tracks from the show, are out now. To order your copy, call 0870 1234 344 or click on to channel4.com/shop.